Kick ass.
Law school is different than undergraduate study in a host of particulars, but none is more profound than the method by which law students are graded. While undergraduate students typically have multiple assignments, tests, and other opportunities to earn a high grade for a particular class, law students' grades in every 1L class depend on only one event, a single final exam administered at the end of the semester. Now, because your first year grades will probably determine everything about what kind of career you'll have once you enter practice, the stakes are as high as they can possibly be for that exam, and the margin for error on them is non-existent. Most students, sadly, don't have any idea how law school exams work until they actually experience one. And when they do, they pay a high professional price for their relative inexperience with the exam's mechanics. If you want to make sure that you're prepared for exactly what awaits you, then you can watch this short 15-minute video and know exactly what you're going to have to do to get the grades you'll need to get the jobs you want. So let me give you a broad conceptual overview of everything we're about to discuss in detail right now, okay? Law school really has two primary dynamics that you need to be aware of. It has a subjective dynamic and it has an objective dynamic. So law school is subjective in the sense that you individually have to outperform your peers. And another way of describing law school subjectivity is to call it gladiatorial, or describe it as a zero-sum game. You know, for a gladiator to live, somebody else has got to die. For someone to win, others have to lose. And not everything in life is like that, but law school definitely is. On the other hand, law school is objective in the sense that there are definite, concrete benchmarks by which your individual performance will be measured. And another way of referring to law school's objectivity would be to talk about how you have to know how to IRAC well on your exams, or have to issue, spot, and analyze. That acronym or that phrase really is trying to get at the objective component, all right? So what you need to do is you need to have a balanced understanding of the grading system's objectivity and subjectivity so that you can both master the concrete measurable skills that you need to and push yourself to do them better than anyone else does. So let's take a look at how exam grading happens in practical terms, okay? So the method that law professors almost universally use to grade students during the 1L year is a timed, essay-formatted issue spotting exam. So this is going to be some hypo, a factual narrative that your professor writes for you and then asks you to analyze. And you'll most likely have to write your answer within a specific period of time. Usually, you've got to sit for an exam at a particular time in a particular place and write your essays within a 3 or 4 hour proctored period. Now, occasionally, you're going to get a take-home exam over a 24-hour non-proctored period, but that's the exception, not the rule. So an exam is objective in the sense that there's a definite method of apportioning points to students' answers, to scoring them, all right? So the professor who wrote the exam is a series of issues, which are just legal rules or theories, that he expects you to mention and discuss in your answer. And as a consequence, the professor is going to have a checklist of all of those issues that a student could discuss if they spotted everything the professor expects the student to address. So we might have a final exam checklist with battery, assault, trespass, negligence, IIED, defamation, nuisance, and product liability in a torts class, all right? So the professor will take the answers to his final to a research assistant, or, I've heard apocryphal stories about, professors' 12-year-old daughters who were doing this. But initially, this first person is going to review the answer just for how many of the issues on the checklist the student's answer even mentions. So student answers that mention only a few of the issues are sorted into one group, and you can guess whether that's a good group or not, while answers that mention most or all of them go into another, and these are the ones that are genuinely in contention for the A. So the way this works is the professor is going to allot a definite number of raw points to each issue. And typically a student's going to get a modest amount of raw points just for spotting that issue, right? So let's just say that spotting each of these issues is worth 2 raw points. A student who spots all of these issues, therefore, except for nuisance, would get at least 16 raw points on the exam. The real points on the exam, though, are in the quality of the discussion that a particular issue receives. So if there are 10 total raw points available for the analysis of the battery issue, a poor analysis might get, 3 raw points, whereas an excellent analysis might draw 8. So you get 10 total points for the battery issue, right? So a student who spots all of the issues and discusses each of them extremely well would therefore get a huge raw score. Now, I will just say a performance like this on a final would probably get a student, if not the top grade, then into contention for the top grade. And that's because this work is atypical. It's much more common for student performance to be uneven. One student spots all or close to all of the issues, but their discussion is weak. Or another student writes excellent analyses of every issue they spot, but they only catch a few of them to begin with. So they're clearly not going to be in contention for the A. What you need to take away from this, what should be obvious to you at this point, is that a student's raw point totals are totally objective. They're as straightforward as they could possibly be. And there's absolutely no subjectivity to whether a student spots an issue to begin with. It's either there in their answer or it's not. It's absolutely cut and dry. Now, it is true that there are some points for style in a student's analysis, maybe a point or two. So if you write really well, you might capture 1 or 2 points in there that someone else might not. But the bulk of the points available for analysis really hinge on your use of the law and the facts. And provided that you follow a fairly straightforward formula for that, you can capture most of those regardless of whether you're a great writer or not, especially since this is going to be a time thing. So the objective part of the grading process, collecting raw points by spotting issues and analyzing them, is commonly referred to by the acronym IRAC. And I just want you to see, because these features of the grading system are objective, they absolutely can be learned. To spot an issue, to discuss an issue well. So any student willing to learn this skill can absolutely consistently collect huge amounts of raw points. So we've talked about what's objective. Now let's talk about what's subjective. The subjective feature of the law school grading system has to do with how many of those raw points you have to get in order to actually get an A for your grade. All right? Here's where the subjective part comes in. So you and your classmates are all going to get different raw scores, obviously. And we're just going to think of those scores as if they're on a continuum and recognize that no one's going to get even close to actually collecting all of the possible points on your exam. But by the same token, unless they don't actually show up for it, none of your classmates are actually going to get 0 raw points, okay? There's going to be somebody who gets the most, somebody who gets the least, and a bunch of people who get close to the same number of raw points within a rough average. So for statistical simplicity in our example here, let's just say that the lowest raw score in a group is 13, that 65 is the highest, and that the mean score for all of the students is 39. Let's also assume that this particular school or course or whatever uses a 4.0 grading scale. So factoring in those assumptions, your professor is going to use those raw scores to create a statistical bell curve. And this bell curve is going to basically rigidly determine students' grades. So in essence, what your professor is going to do is peg the raw scores to the minimum extreme, the mean, and the maximum extreme of a bell curve and assign the corresponding grade to each. All right? And you can see we've got our quartiles here. 13 raw points brings us to the lower quartile, 13 more to the mean, 13 to the upper quartile, 13 to the extreme. All right? So the student gets only 26 raw points, gets exactly a 2.5 GPA for the course, a C. But a student who gets 58 raw points gets roughly a 3.8 GPA for it. That's a solid A. So in general, on our example, the students with raw points of at least 26 points, but less than 52, get somewhere between a B and a C. So only the students who get 53 raw points or more are going to get even an A- for their grade. So literally, to get into A contention, you've got to outrun 3 out of 4 of your classmates. And by the same token, for every great grade a professor gives out, they will give out a terrible one, just so that they can preserve the mean of the grading scale. Now, in some ways, it's not intentional. It's just the way that this averaging system works out, but you get the idea. I mean, this is the classic example of the zero-sum game. For every winner, there's a loser. Now, here's the second to last thing to consider, and that's the spread. So the spread on this bell curve is pretty long. There's a 52-point difference between the high grade and the low one. A long spread usually happens when there's a curve buster student in your class with you. And this is somebody who issues spots like a boss. So they're racking up a massive raw point total. And what that does is that stretches the right end of the bill curve. It skews the mean higher, which means that it takes a higher and higher raw score to get to the last 25%, the upper quartile of the bell curve. So in essence, what you have to do is you have to spot more issues to cross the upper quartile than you would if the spread were short. So in other words, the longer the spread, the more radically you have to outperform the mean to get into A territory. So let's just suppose that on this exam, each issue fully analyzed is worth about 5 raw points apiece. In that case, to just get from the mean, a B or a C territory to A minus territory, you have to fully analyze at least 3 whole issues more than the average student in the class. So on our hypothetical example here, that would mean that the average student fully analyzed roughly 8 issues, because that gets them to 40 points, but that the best law student would have to analyze the exam efficiently enough to do at least 11 in the same amount of time. And that may not sound like a big deal to you, but finding the extra time to analyze 3 more whole issues can be very challenging if each issue takes an average of, and I'm just picking a number here, between 10 and 20 minutes to address in a well-reasoned essay. Remember, if you've only got 3 or 4 hours, that time is precious. 20 minutes is a long time in a timed essay. So what happens when the spread on a final is short? What if instead of going from 13 to 65, our raw scores range from, let's just say, 10 to 30? This scenario has 2 important dynamics that I want you to see. First, almost insignificant differences in students' raw point totals yield drastic differences in their grades. A student with, 21 raw points on our little example here would get a 3.1 GPA for the class. On the other hand, a student with only 6 more raw points, so 27, would get a 3.6. Now, that is a full letter grade difference. So if the significance of that change is not immediately obvious to you, here's why it is such a big deal. If each issue on our exam is worth the 5 raw points that we posited previously, then with a shorter spread, one student gets an entire letter grade higher than another simply by spotting 1 more issue, just 1 more IRAC. So here's the bad news. You already know the bad news. Law school is a zero-sum game. So if you don't outrun 75% of your classmates on your 1L exams, you will not get A's. You will not get the elite job offers you want. And you may not, it's not guaranteed, but you may not get a job practicing law if you're in that bottom half. On the other hand, there is good news here, and that is that the spreads on 1L exams tend to be short. Most new law students have very little experience with an issue spotting exam. So that means, if the spreads are short, that by being even marginally better at collecting raw points on a law school exam, you can drastically outperform your classmates. And not only that, but because of the fact that law school prioritizes your early grades so much, the early advantage you enjoy at collecting raw points will be the most pronounced during the exact semesters when your grades matter the most. In other words, it pays a huge professional dividend to be good in those semesters, and it's the easiest to be better than your classmates in those semesters. So now that you fully understand sort of the zero-sum game of law school and how you get your grades, the question that should be on your mind is, okay, so how do I get better at collecting raw points than my classmates? So the simple answer to that question is, if you master just 1 core skill, you can turn yourself into an issue spotting god. Being even modestly better at that skill while your classmates are still sort of green at it in the first year will allow you to exploit those short early spreads on your 1L exams, get the top grades, and kick off an elite career practicing law with a bang. Now I know what you're thinking. Okay, cool, there's some secret weapon I can learn and use to do that. Well, what the hell is it, Poindexter? And for those of you who want the answer to that question, you can get it by clicking on the link below this video and watching the second half of this free training. In roughly 20 minutes or so, we'll give you an overview of what the skill is and what you need to do on a final and during the semester to secure a top spot in your class rankings.
Kick ass.